Hey YouTube, this is Kelvin Buckner here. Follow me while we go on a journey to see which Corvette that I want to obtain. Now, obviously, you see a C4 Corvette. The C4 Corvette is actually my favorite Corvette out of all the generation, plus the C606, of course, but the C4 Corvette has always been my favorite since childhood. Now, this video you're actually looking at right now is a Motor Week episode where they're actually going over the car, telling you what type of car it is. And I always liked this since I was the 90s. When I used to be a teenager, the Impala SS was my all-time favorite car. I love that car to this day until I got my 740i. But the Corvette has always been on my mind and said, you know what, this is the kind of car I kind of want, but it was so expensive at the time as a teenager in college. I was like, I don't think I could ever afford one of these. And then when the pandemic happened, I was like, you know what, let me check one of these out. So I started doing some research and I was like, this car is really a lot better car to own. It's more affordable, more profitable. It's a pretty fast car. It actually goes 0 to 60 in 5.4 seconds, which is phenomenal, for a sports car of the 90s. So I was like, you know what, let me give this car a shot. So started doing some research, and again, from childhood, I've always been playing with cars. Always been a car guy. The Corvette has always been there, but I never noticed it until I became an adult, to the point where I'm like looking at all these videos, watching YouTube of other YouTubers making Corvette content. And I used to always say, man, the C4 Corvette is a beautiful car. And it always caught my eye, but it never saw me. It dawned on me. When I was a young kid, I used to always play with a toy just like this when I was a little kid. Years go by, I realized, oh my God, it was a C4 Corvette toy. So when I used to play with this car or this toy, I had so much fun. When I became a middle school, like 8th grade, 9th grade, I used to play this game. If you guys remember this game is Need for Speed 1 for PS1 and PC, but I had PS1. Now, if you see, the thing I liked about this game was you could be inside the car while you're driving. So I had to pretend, oh yeah, I'm driving and racing all these other cars. And the beauty about this portion was that you could see the miles per hour in the game. And this was my favorite car to play with because I used to play Need for Speed and used to have the hot pursuit. We get chased by the cops on this model, on this series right here. So I used to always play this game. I used to be so infatuated with it. And then when I was in college, I actually worked on this exact same car when I went to tech school in Maryland. And this car is actually still there to this day. So if you're in Maryland, I helped work on this car as well. I helped learn off this car, I should say. So the very first car I looked at was the 85. This one right here it was nice. It was bright red. I didn't see anything blemishing out the paint or anything. The paint looked very good. Interior was okay, except this car felt slow. It even had a 4+3 Doug Nash 4-speed manual transmission. Had the L98 230 horsepower. However,
so what do y'all think? Chevy Corvette, late models, 80s, C4 Corvette, stick shift? I don't know.
To me, it just felt slow. And ultimately, I had to turn this car down. But this was the very first car. The only blemish it had was these cracks on the target top. All right, so this 93 was really nice. I saw it for 11.5, and when I went to go see the car, test drove it, found that it wasn't worth 11.5. There were so much issues with this car, it wasn't even funny. I like that it was a 6-speed manual. That's what drew me to say, you know what, I may consider it. But after pulling over after the test drive, I found a ton of stuff wrong with it.
Oh my gosh. So close and yet so far, like I could just grab it. But I'm gonna have to decline it. Well, just drove it. Found a couple things wrong with this one. It's leaking oil from the bottom. It's making a loud tapping noise. Check the dipstick. No reading on arrival. ABS light is on. The handbrake does not work. I like it though. sounds nice. It drives fast. It's quick on acceleration. I think it's worth it, but not what he's asking for. It's a practice. It's a potential fixer-upper for sure, though. And it's a true Florida car, so it's a Floridian.
So I shot him an offer of 7,500. Then I doubled down and was like, "Look, I'll give you $5,000 for it." He said, "No, I'll fix it and I could sell it to you for 7,500." I never heard from the guy ever again. I'm starting to think that this car was a striker.
Oh, my bad. Clean though. It's clean. I like how the dash, everything's curved to you. The seats are nice. Its seats are comfortable too. Just don't think it's worth the price.
So this 86 or 87, I believe, was very nice. Another red one. Had C6 wheels on it. This car looked good, except it had one big exception. It did not come with a engine or a transmission, which was no big deal. The guy only wanted $2,500 for the body. I would have installed a LS and put a T56 under the hood and go from there. Except I did not get this car because the guy did not have the title for this car. And I'm not buying a car with no engine or transmission with no title. So I had to decline this car. So I found this 95 model. I saw it listing on eBay and I found it on Marketplace. I drove all the way to Hialeah, Florida, which was very crazy. I was very desperate on obtaining a Corvette. I drove all the way to Hialeah, Florida, and I found this guy that was selling a whole bunch of generations. He had C1, C2, C3, C4s. I think the C4 was the latest models he had. But this one right here, I was 50-50 on getting it also. He was telling me, "Oh man, there's a lot of people bidding on this." He has 18 bids, or believe it, on this car already. It looked nice, had an LT1. It sounded nice. Revving it up, it sounds smooth. So I was like, okay, it looks like it needs a lot of work. So I was thinking to myself, I was like, if I were to buy this car, I'm gonna have to put a lot of money into it. And the tires weren't all that great. The tires were cracking. The seals on the windows were bad. The interior is the crazy part. So on the listing, he has that the car has 125,000 miles. In reality, it had 155,000 miles. I was like, okay, I guess I'm talking you down for the price for this one. And then I look around the car, the controls are not working for the climate controls.
So this doesn't.
I'm trying to turn up, turn down, turn off the fans, and it stays running. So I'm like, oh my gosh, there's an issue right there. So I was like, man, if I buy this car, I'm gonna have to put a lot of money and time into this car. It did sound very smooth revving it up. So okay, so I was like, okay, the motor itself is sounded, so I'm not too concerned. The ASR worked perfectly fine. The horn worked. The headliner was crazy. I was like, man, this ain't the glass top, so glove box is not all that great. The interior is trash. I was like, man, I have to go on Eckler's and try to buy me a whole carpet, which is no big deal. When I came across the engine now, I was like, okay, the engine sounds okay. It has like a little scraping noise coming from a pulley or something. I probably need to change a pulley. No big deal. And then I was like, man, this car looks like it might be something. I might possibly look at this one. The guy kept on coming and saying, oh yeah, man, I got a lot of bidders, man. And then I'm like, yo, like, you sure you can buy it right now, right here? I'll cancel the bid, just buy it right here. And I was like, man, let me think, let me look it over. I'm just looking, I'm finding all these issues, and I'm like, dang, man, this car is dirty. These tires are not that great. Like, I cannot drive this car out of here. And the crazy part about it, I asked him, could I drive this car around for a test drive? He was like, yeah, sure, absolutely. I get there, nope. The car was blocked in. It was blocked in by another Corvette. So I'm like, oh my goodness, man. So I'm looking at the body. The paint isn't all that great. It's faded. The seals need to be replaced. Like, I couldn't park this in my driveway. It would get worse by the day.
And looking at the front of the car, I was like, man, it's silver. It actually matches all my other cars because all my other cars are silver. So this was like a keynote. It was like, yo, I might jump on this because I really want to see for a Corvette. This is how desperate I was, yo. And I was like looking it over. I was like, man, they got the C6Z06 wheels. I think ZR1 wheels on them. So I was like, okay. Look it over. I was like, man, this thing needs to be repainted. It's bad. It's chipping. It's bad. I have to sand this car down. I was like, I don't know. I actually told him no. And then the car ended up getting sold for like $3,500 or $3,800. It was ridiculous. The interior was okay, but I knew I had to redo the interior for sure. It was stained right there on the passenger floorboard, and this is how I found the head, the target top, and it stayed like this. So this was a firm no. So he has another 94. So this one was red. I would say burgundy, but it looks like it's faded red. This car needed a lot of work. It took him a while to start it. It had to jump start it, and while he jump started, it kept on like running rough until he revved it out, and then it started running smooth. But this was the best you could hear how it sounded, and I was like, man, I don't know about this. For some reason, I was like, man, kind of like thinking about it. Should I? I was like, nah, I can't do this, man. To be honest with you, the pictures for this one and the silver one, they look way better than how they look in person. You know, the way how he had it listed, those cars look decent. Like if you saw how this car looked based on the first picture of the intro of this car, yeah, this car looks really nice, but the interior was trashed out. I would have to change these seats. I was like, hell no, man. So this was a firm no on this one too. All right, so he also had a 92 Corvette. Basically, this car was very nice. However, nice looking, I would say. However, it did not run. It was sitting, just like how you see, in front of his business. And I said to myself, this car does look like a potential car. It's red on red. I did like that. It was very appealing to me. The only blemish I did see on the car, other than the paint being faded, was that it had a tear in the seat. It looked pretty decent. The interior was very nice. No other scratches I could really see. The seals weren't that bad on this car. Again, the driver's seats was probably the only bad thing about the car. Well, blemish, I would say. But ultimately, my wife was like, why would you want to get this car for? This car doesn't run. If you want to buy your dream car, buy a dream car that runs. And she's absolutely right. So I ultimately had to turn this car down. Does have a true LT1, which was kind of what I'm looking for. But I'm optimistic on finding a L98. All right, so this car, I believe it was a 85, maybe 86, most likely probably 87 the most, because it has the 4+3 Doug Nash manual transmission in there. So this one sounded very nice. I really liked the color. It was black on black. You could tell it was repainted. The dash, on the other hand, wasn't all that working. It wasn't working at all, actually. The center dash doesn't work, but the center console where all the gauges, the aftermarket gauges are, those work in replace of the dash. So I was like, okay. I had like a fake Momo steering wheel, which wasn't bad, but I could tell this car looked like it used to be a race car. When he popped the hood now, that's when I realized, oh crap, this car has a carburetor. I'm not really a fan of carburetors because I never really learned as much how to work on carburetors, because in my career as a technician, or while I was going to school, my instructor basically said, you don't ever need to work on a carburetor because it's being phased out. Fuel injection is the way to go, and it's been like that ever since, and I've never worked on a carburetor. But upon looking over this car, I found a bunch of issues. Vacuum hoses missing, bolts are loose, connectors not hooked up. And I was like, there's so much, yo. And I was like, man, I don't know about this car. I felt like someone just got an engine out of a small block Chevy. It could be like a cast iron engine for all I know, like basically from a truck, and they just threw it in there. Because back in the day, that's what people did, and people still do that if you know about Corvettes. But it sounded very nice until he revved it. When he revved it, the engine started tapping, and then when I heard the engine tapping, I was like, okay, this guy wants to punt this car. So I was considering it. I was like, man, if anything, I'll swap it out and bring a LT1 or LS1 for this car. Possibly a LS1. It's a lot easier to work with. But I don't know. There's a bunch of issues I kept on seeing. It ran until when I asked him if I could test drive the car, he was basically saying no because this car is not registered to be on the road. And I was like, man, you have this car for sale for like $3,500 and I cannot drive this car. So what he ended up doing will allow me to go back and forth in his front yard. So I drove from one side of the yard, or I'm sorry, I drove forward to one side of the yard and put it in reverse and went backwards in the one side of the yard. So ultimately I was like, nah, man. So looked the car over, wanted to see if all the electronics work. I know the dash doesn't work. I was gonna say the turn signal works. The turn signal works great. Looking at the lights and see if the lights pop up and pop down.
Close the. Can you close this?
The paint was really good. The pop-up lights work. The tires didn't look like the original tires for these cars. All right, I went to go look at this one. It won't start. Looks like it needs some TLC. I even asked him, could I drive it home? He was like, no. He even recommends towing it. Looks pretty decent. However, the bottom floor mat is wet. This car will not start. That is wild. So now I had to change my search and I started looking further. This one was way out in Naples. So I haven't seen it yet in person, but I'm gonna go drive to Naples tomorrow and hopefully this may be the car. It looks clean. The wheels look good. The paint looks very good. So I like the little spoiler it has on the back of it. So it's a possibility that this may be it. If not, I'm leaving the state of Florida and I'm going to Georgia to go look for another car. So please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next episode.